Hey classes, so due to some technical difficulties, we were unable to do some screen recordings for our classes yesterday, so we are now going to hopefully load these into YouTube so you can have access to all the notes that we owe you, all right? So yesterday we got into a conversation about the heart, starting with the circulatory system. So we were talking about, how all this stuff gets transported to all parts of my body, and that's where you can start seeing this essential question right here. So I need to go open my Notability. There it is. All right. So one thing that we did not do just now was the this activity right here. This is the introduction activity I had everyone do. What I would suggest is that you do this in class on your own, or sorry, on your own if you were not able to participate in this particular activity. If not, we will just move on to the notes portion of it. So here, and we're talking about the essential question, how do the things in my body get transported to where it needs to go, right? So it's known as a circulatory system because, well, it circulates blood around the body to all the organs that need it. It's also known as the cardiovascular system. It helps keep us alive, all right? It helps keep us alive, and it's a really important system, probably the important system that we need to know and understand because it's in charge of a lot of the functions in our body. But we have to know a lot about the structures of the circulatory system. So one of those structures is, of course, the blood. Blood is a substance that carries things like gases and nutrients throughout the entire body. Gases and nutrients, all right? Now, if you're thinking about nutrients, we just got done talking about the digestive system, and we know that the digestive system drops off nutrients into the body at the small intestine, and I'll kind of go over that again once we get there, all right? So part of this structure is the plasma. Blood structure is the plasma. It is the liquid portion of the blood. This is what actually makes our blood wet, all right? And we can see plasma here in this particular picture that I put into the notes, is where you have this kind of clear liquid right here. What happened with this blood is that it was spun in a centrifuge. Basically, this tube here, let's say, was put into a tube like this as regular whole blood, right? So if it comes out as regular whole blood, what happens is after it spins, you are left with a lot of this liquid up at the top, and all the red blood cells have been pushed to the bottom, all right? And that's what happened here. This is the plasma that I was talking about, the liquid portion of your blood, all right? And of course, at the bottom are these iron-rich cells that are filled with hemoglobin, all right? These red blood cells get their color from hemoglobin. Is the protein that actually carries the oxygen. So, without going too deeply into the structure of hemoglobin, just know that red blood cells are built especially to hold oxygen and carry it to the rest of your body. All right, and another part of your blood are the white blood cells. All right, your white blood cells, also known as the leukocytes, they help protect the body against infection. So whenever you get an infection, the white blood cell count kind of bumps up in your body because your body knows that, hey, there's something that's not supposed to be here. We have to take care of it. And the white blood cells' job is to do that. Another important job of another part of your body are the platelets, okay? The platelets are cell fragments without a nucleus. They are parts of cells, but they do not have a nucleus. They help clot your blood to prevent you from losing blood just in case there's a rip and a tear in one of your blood vessels, okay? So I know that I'm going through this fast. So, but what I want you to do is, if you need to, you can pause it right here and kind of go over it again, slow it down. You can control that sound in YouTube once you have this available to you again. All right. Now, looking deeper into the structure of blood, let's look at this plasma here. It's about 55% of your blood volume, right? 55% is a lot. The other 41% is in the red blood cells. Again, makes up a lot of your blood. The 4% here is those white blood cells and platelets. They kind of share the rest of the blood volume. But if you think about it, the majority of your blood is water that's in this plasma. Okay? And also understand that cells, even red blood cells, are made of mostly water. So if you think about how much water is in your blood, it's quite a bit. Okay? So, to carry this blood all around our body, you need a roadway. I like to call the blood vessels a roadway to carry all of these necessary materials through our body. All right, so the blood vessels here are channels or conduits that help distribute blood to all body tissues. All right, and we'll talk about those tissues here shortly when we talk about gas exchange. Now, those blood vessels, there are three main blood vessels. First one are the arteries. They carry blood away from the heart. I'm going to highlight away here because it's really important that you understand that the arteries carry blood away from the heart. They are surrounded by thick muscle. If you look at this diagram right here, you can see that there's a thick layer of muscle cells around the arteries. All right. Now, when you think about why are there so much muscles around the arteries? Well, think about the expansion that the arteries are going to need to do in order to be able to withstand the force of the heart. The heart is a very strong muscle. It is constantly pumping, and those arteries are meant to be able to be very flexible. All right. So they can pump back to the normal size after each heartbeat. And that thick muscle tissue helps retain its structure and its shape in order to help push that blood to where it needs to go. All right? And now that we know that arteries are pumping blood away from the heart, well, once they get to where they need to go, well, they make a U-turn and they have to go back to the heart. All right? So when they go back to the heart, we are now looking at the veins here. The veins carry blood toward the heart. And that major vein that we're talking about is the vena cava. The vena cava has thinner muscle around the blood vessel, again, because it's farther away from the heart. It doesn't need that thick muscle to be able to bounce back into shape. The blood flow is controlled by these valves here. If you look at this valve, you notice that they're pointing that direction. That means blood can move in one direction only, because if blood tried to move back in this direction, it would close this valve up and it wouldn't go anywhere. So if blood tried to flow backwards, it would just be stopped by that valve. After each pump, it's going to push this blood that direction. All right, so the veins are actually created to make sure that blood does not flow backwards where it's not supposed to go. The last blood vessel we're going to talk about are the capillaries. They are the smallest of the blood vessels, but the most abundant. They are one cell thick, those walls. The cell walls on a capillary are one cell thick. Okay? So remember that. They are the smallest, but most abundant. If you think about it, anytime you cut yourself, you have capillary bleeding at your knee. So anytime you skin your knee playing a sport, and you're riding your skateboard and you fall, you scrape your knee. It hurts. It feels like you're going to die because all those nerve endings are hurting and screaming in pain. But you're not going to lose a lot of blood. Okay? Blood vessels at the knee are just capillary blood vessels. So what you need to do is wait for that blood to clot, because that's what's happening, is that your blood, to prevent that loss of blood, your blood is going to clot because of these platelets. And because those cells are so small and those capillaries are so small, the platelets do a good job of closing up closing those vessels on their own and creating a scab to stop you from bleeding. All right? And as you can see here, and even in this diagram, you've got the capillaries here that are 1 cell thick, and this is a good example of what we're looking at here as far as the capillaries are concerned. Okay? Awesome. Now, the main reason why we're studying the circulatory system, and this is the main part, is, of course, the heart. It is a muscular pump that provides the force necessary to circulate the blood to all the tissues of the body. Now think about where this blood has to go. It has to make it to my big toe. So let's say that there's a basketball player. Let's think about Giannis. Giannis is 7 feet tall and some change, right? He's a really big guy. His blood is going to be pumped from his heart way up there to his toes way down there. All right, and his toes still need a source of blood, and the heart is responsible for that. It's really muscular. It's got all these parts to it. There's actually more that I'm going to list out for you, and I'm going to label them on this diagram. All right, so this is what I want you to do. Follow along with me while I do this diagram. Now what you can do is pause it here if you want to take a close look, and just follow along as I draw these in. So the first area we're going to talk about is the superior vena cava. And actually, I'm going to talk about the inferior vena cava at the same time. So actually, let me call that 1A, and this is 1B. First area we're going to talk about, because this is where the blood flows into the heart. All right, I'm going to draw this with a blue arrow. All right, so this goes into the superior vena cava. That is your source of blood into the heart. And it's blue because it's deoxygenated. Blue means deoxygenated blood. And if that's what blue means, well, red must mean oxygenated. All right. So as we continue to label this heart, the right atrium here is where the blood will empty into. And that's going to be our number 2. Whoops. Number 2 there. The right atrium is where the blood enters, or where the blood enters into. And then we are going to give it another color blue. And we're going to draw the flow here. And then, of course, coming from the inferior vena cava in here. Now, another spot that we need to talk about is this tricuspid valve. The tricuspid valve is actually ensuring, like we talked about valves in the veins, it ensures one-way motion of the blood. Once this blood enters the right ventricle here, it can't go back this way. If it tries to, it'll shut that valve, all right? And if that were to pump, anytime that this heart pumps, all right, anytime these muscles pump, it's going to push this valve shut, all right? It's going to push this valve shut, and there's only one way for it to go. It's this way because this valve is facing that way. So the tricuspid valve ensures that one-way motion, okay? So, to quickly review, inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava has deoxygenated blood. All right. As it goes into the right ventricle, which we are going to label number 4, the right ventricle pumps into number 5, or through number 5, which is the pulmonary valve, and into the pulmonary artery, which we're going to call number 6. All right. Now the tricuspid valve, again here, is shutting closed once the right ventricle pumps. Then it goes into, or through, the pulmonary valve and into the pulmonary artery. All right, now the pulmonary artery, anytime you see the word pulmonary, and we're going to say this over and over again, pulmonary equals lungs. All right? Anytime you see the lungs, or anytime you see the word pulmonary, think lungs. All right, so it's going to go take a trip to the lungs. It's going to get oxygen. So it's going to come back from the lungs, and we are now oxygenated. All right, so anything back from the lungs is going to come this way, and it's the pulmonary vein, we're going to number that one, number 7. All right, it'll empty into number 8 over here, the left atrium, and the left atrium is where that blood empties into. All right, it empties into number 7, into the left atrium, going through the mitral valve, which we're going to label number 8. Once we go through the mitral valve now, it will enter the left ventricle. And the left ventricle, again, once these large muscles pump, if you're looking at these really strong muscles, they are going to shut the mitral valve and then flow out of the aortic valve. So let's number the left ventricle here, number 9. Oh, hold on. Let me go back here. I know I missed something. The mitral valve is actually number 9. Yep, caught myself, which means the left ventricle is number 10. All right. Now we are going to go out the aortic valve. Here, the blood's going to make a U-turn, head out the aortic valve, and we're going to call the aortic valve number 10. Oh, I did it again. Number 11. And then into the aorta, which we'll label number 12. All right. And then the aorta is going to bring all of its oxygenated goodness to the rest of the body and all of its tissues. Okay? Now, going into here, though, you've got 2 circuits that we need to talk about, all right? There's different paths of blood, and we have to understand them both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle this path here. This is the pulmonary circuit. Now, remember, pulmonary means lungs, brings blood to the lungs so it can be oxygenated. All right? And then it brings it back to the heart. Once it brings it back to the heart, it brings all that oxygenated blood to all the parts of the body. Oxygenated blood to the body, and that's the systemic system. So it's as soon as it leaves the heart, it goes into the pulmonary system here. It leaves the heart, goes into the pulmonary system, gets oxygenated, all right? And gets oxygenated because of this gas exchange here. And I'm going to circle gas exchange. All right? That gas exchange now is an important part of this. All right? So, what this looks like is that means that, remember, this deoxygenated gas, this has carbon dioxide in it. Carbon dioxide is abbreviated with CO2. CO2 goes out. All right? It leaves the lungs. All right? But what comes in is oxygen. Oxygen goes in. All right? So that's happening at the lungs. Once that carbon dioxide leaves and the oxygen goes in, now your blood is oxygenated, and it's going to follow the rest of this path down back into your heart, where it will pump out of this left ventricle and into the rest of the body. Now, once we get to the rest of the body, you are now in the systemic circuit. And in the systemic circuit, once we get to those capillary beds, those really, really thin, one-cell wall thick blood vessels, this is where another type of gas exchange occurs. So in these cells, what you are going to see now is oxygen is going to come out of the capillaries, and then those cellular processes are going to happen, and carbon dioxide now goes in to those capillaries. All right, so that's happening there. So that way, all we're sending back to the heart is deoxygenated blood to get back into the pulmonary system once it leaves this right ventricle. All right, and so on and so forth and over again with every single heartbeat. Okay? Now, what I want you to do is, see how this video opens right here? Go ahead and watch this video. It's an Amoeba Sisters video. It explains everything that we've talked about, just as an additional way for you to study and so you can accept the material in a different way, not just listening to my voice, which I'm sure is marvelous for you to hear over and over again. All right? So, with that, the next day's, you guys should have done this homework, and we are good there. This is it for the notes portion of this video. What I'm going to do is stop this video and record the next video for the next day. So the next day is mainly, there's a lot of review stuff, so I want to make sure that you guys got the same materials that your classmates in person got. So we'll talk to you shortly.